Rock and roll is packed with strange turns, forgotten characters, and stories that don't always follow the usual script. And honestly, that's where some of the best books live. Today, I'm going to take a look at a few books that bring just enough energy to satisfy any rock fan who likes things a little bit left of center. This week, I was sent a copy of a follow-up to one of the most unique and unusual memoirs I've read. It came out last year. I'm your host, Big Rick. I've been doing the Rock Talk Studio podcast now for over 4 years. So today I'm going to draw from the books that I've read in that time. And inspired by this new title, I'm going to take a look and recommend some of rock's most unusual reads that I've come across in the last 4 years. And I'm going to start with the one that kicked this conversation off, and that's Robyn Hitchcock's memoir. It's entitled 1967, How I Got There and Why I Never Left. It's a memoir about 1 year, 1967, and how that year permanently rewired Robyn Hitchcock's imagination. What makes this book so unique is that it doesn't behave like a normal rock and roll memoir. Hitchcock isn't walking through the usual checklist of bands, albums, tours, success, failure, comeback. Instead, he takes 1 year, 1967, and he treats it like the year that never stopped happening. The writing is so easygoing, and the book just flows. It's got a great pace to it, and it's a fairly quick read. It totals about 213 pages, but it's really a great capture of that time. He's young, he's going to boarding school, and he's learning about life. And the other thing that makes it stand out is that it treats music less like entertainment and more like a portal. And he's hearing the Beatles for the first time, Dylan, Hendrix, Pink Floyd, the Kinks. They aren't just records coming out in the background of his life. To Hitchcock, they're signals from another world. They give him a language for feelings he doesn't yet understand. They show him that the adult world around him may not have all the answers. Bob Dylan especially becomes a spiritual force for him, the person who seems to know something that the teachers and the parents do not. And Hitchcock uses 1967 as a grounding point, one that served as a model to how he wanted to always feel, not only in 1967, but for the rest of his life. Tremendous memoir. He just released a second memoir called Stranded in the Future. That was the book that I got, and I'll be talking that in the upcoming weeks. But this one continues his creative writing style and takes you through the years of him forming the band he's probably best known for, Soft Cell. The next book, I have never in the 4+ years of reading all these rock and roll books have ever come across anything like this. The name of the book is The White Python World Tour, and it's very unique because it takes the mythology of the 1980s hair metal and it turns it completely around. It's wildly entertaining. It's an alternative history where rock and roll becomes kind of a secret weapon in the Cold War. And yes, this sounds completely insane because it is, but that's why this book works. It's a fictional rock and roll book where an 80s hair metal drummer gets recruited into the CIA. His girlfriend turns out to be an undercover operative, and one ridiculous power ballad that he writes that may help bring down the Soviet Republic is featured here. Crazy, yes, but it works because it doesn't just mock hair metal. It clearly loves the whole ridiculous world of it. Ricky Thunder is the main character. He could have been a joke, but he's not. He's funny, he's clueless, he's loyal, really ambitious, and just weirdly lovable. You can laugh at him, but you also end up rooting for him. And that's what surprised me about this book. Underneath all the hairspray and the fake backstage wisdom that gets passed along by a few real rock and roll guest stars, there's actually a lot of heart here. It's parody, but it's also a love letter. It's absurd, but it's not empty. And it reads less like a typical rock novel and more like a movie that you can kind of see playing in your head. I think it's actually been optioned for a movie. It's that type of a story. I liked it because it takes the most over-the-top era in rock and roll and makes it even more over-the-top, but somehow turns into a smart and funny, nostalgic, completely original story. If you're looking for a good summer read, check this one out, The White Python World Tour. Okay, I got 3 more books coming up. One that includes a member of the Beatles you probably never heard of, which I know is a long shot, but I'm going to test you on this one. Another book that's very unique. It's a different type of rock and roll memoir. And then a book about an author searching for life's answers through the music and life of a legend. All right, let's continue this Rock's Most Unusual Reads with a really cool memoir written by Peter Wolf called Waiting on the Moon, Artists, Poets, Drifters, Grifters, and Goddesses. This one reads like a bohemian travelogue through American music and art and culture, and it's told by a guy who somehow kept up ending in the room with all these people. Peter Wolf, probably best known as the lead singer to one of the greatest live bands in rock and roll, the mighty J. Geils Band. If you had a chance to see them, you know what I'm talking about. And in his memoir, Wolf is not just telling his old story, he's telling the story of a life spent orbiting other creative people, musicians, painters, writers, actors, drifters, hustlers, and a lot of legends. This book reads like a series of short stories from a life that almost sounds kind of too wild to be true. Muddy Waters was sleeping on his couch when he was just starting out in his early 20s. Alfred Hitchcock actually invited him over to his house one time. Norman Rockwell taught him art when he was a kid. David Lynch was his college roommate. He was married to Faye Dunaway for some time. Now, these are real stories. This happened to this guy. He hung out with Bob Dylan before he was really Bob Dylan. Stories about Mick Jagger, Aretha Franklin stories are great here. Tennessee Williams stories, Waylon Jennings stories, Julius Child stories. I mean, the list just keeps going. But what makes this book work is that it never feels like just empty name dropping. Wolf comes across as curious, he's funny, he's very restless, open-hearted, and deeply respectful of the artist who shaped him. It's a story of a man who spent his life chasing music and art and people who had something electric about him. And somehow, again and again, he found himself standing right in the middle of all the magic that was happening. A really different approach for a memoir that made for a fantastic read. I highly recommend this one. Peter Wolf, Waiting on the Moon, Artists, Poets, Drifters, Grifters, and Goddesses. All right, let's talk Beatles. I told you this was a story coming up about a Beatle. For 13 days, he was a Beatle. He actually saved the Beatles' first world tour. He was 24 years old, and then he was gone, and most people don't even know his name. How is it possible drummer Jimmy Nicol could simply vanish after playing with the Beatles in 1964? This book, The Beatle Who Vanished, is a culmination of 6 years of research from the rock and roll detectives himself, the author Jim Berkenstadt. Berkenstadt is an international authority on the Beatles. He served as a historical consultant to Martin Scorsese's George Harrison Living in the Material World. He's also a consultant to the Beatles company, Apple Corps. Berkenstadt knows his Beatles, and this new version of the book that came out last year finally solves the mystery of Jimmy Nicol, and it finally looks at if the guy is even still alive. And that's what makes this a standout. It's an author chasing down and solving a mystery. And all of that is wrapped in Beatles lore. Very detailed, extremely interesting, and a unique addition to this list. The last one I have for you today is Traveling on the Path of Joni Mitchell by Ann Powers. Ann is a highly decorated music critic, one of the best, and she's done it for over 30 years for NPR, the LA Times, the New York Times, and other publications. Powers is extremely insightful and leans into her critic persona here. This is not a biography. It's not a straight telling of Mitchell's life. What Powers does here is she questions Joni Mitchell's ways and looks at her own life and how she has dealt with similar situations and feelings. She uses Joni's life to answer questions in her own and wrestles with some of the uncomfortable places that it takes her. It's a deep look at Mitchell's music and the way she navigated her life as a woman artist and how that affected not only Joni, but Ann Powers as well. The author was on this journey to do her best to figure out someone she knows she will never figure out. And she realizes that and does a great job at pointing out that Mitchell really can't be defined. Powers positions this story as a journey of not only Joni Mitchell's life, but Ann Powers' life, with Powers using Joni as a flashlight. Very intelligently written, very captivating, and a book I would recommend to not only Joni Mitchell fans, but any lover of a well-written, unique, introspective, and unusual book. Thanks for tuning in this week, everybody. Hopefully I gave you something a little bit different, a little bit offbeat, a little bit left of center when it comes to if you're looking for a new rock and roll book to check out. All right, let's tear it down, pack it up, and head on down the road. I'll catch you next time in the Rock Talk studio.